The engines on the island of Sodor work really hard, sometimes too hard, and then things go wrong. Then they have to go to the steamworks. Victor works hard fixing the engines. It's his favourite job. Whatever the problem is, Victor can fix it in no time with Kevin's help. One day, Victor was talking to Percy, when Thomas puffed in with Rosie. She looked sad.
Flaming fireboxes! What has happened, my friend?
My coal bunker is broken. I've lost all my coal and can't puff and chuff.
Heaving up! That's terrible!
Don't worry, Rosie. It can happen to any engine.
Yeah, like when Gordon had a big hole in his firebox.
Hey, I heard that, Percy.
Well, Rosie, we'll get you puffing along the tracks, but we can't fix your coal bunker yet. We don't have the right parts to fix you yet.
But without my coal in my bunker, how am I going to be able to make steam?
With these, of course.
Rosie couldn't believe it. There, in front of her, was a steam engine's tender. It was painted the same colour as Rosie's paintwork, and it had red wheels like her own. The other engines gasped.
That's my buffers!
Flooding my funnel!
My very own tender?
Of course. You can use it to store lots of coal until we get the parts to fix your coal bunker.
Rosie beamed. Soon, the tender was coupled to Rosie, and her fire was soon burning. She was happy to be steaming again. Just then, the Fat Controller arrived.
Rosie, I have some jobs for you to do.
Rosie was excited. She would be using her new tender for the first time while she did her jobs.
First, you must collect supplies from the docks to the quarry. Then you must take some scrap to Maithway to the smelter's yard. And lastly, you must take coal trucks to the coaling plant to the transfer yard in the hills. Is that understood?
Yes, sir. I will do my best.
Good. I knew I can rely on you.
And the Fat Controller left. Rosie pumped her pistons.
I must hurry. I've got a lot of work to do.
But as Rosie puffed away, Victor tried to tell Rosie something very important.
Rosie, wait! Just because you have a tender doesn't mean you're stronger than Gordon.
But Rosie hadn't heard Victor. This made Victor worry.
Don't worry, Victor. I'll tell Rosie what you said.
Thank you, Thomas.
And with that, Thomas steamed off to find Rosie. Rosie was chuffing and puffing along to collect the supplies from the docks, when she had an idea.
I know. Instead of doing my jobs one at a time, with this tender, I can do all my jobs at once. Rosie, you are a clever engine.
Rosie continued on. Meanwhile, Thomas was puffing as quickly as he could to catch up with Rosie. But then, as Rosie passed the signal, it changed to red. Thomas had to stop.
Oh, bother.
Rosie soon arrived at the docks and backed down onto her waiting trucks. Edward, Henry and Duck were there. They were amazed when they saw Rosie with her own tender.
My, Rosie, that tender makes you look splendid.
Indeed. It's a pity Henry's 6 tenders weren't as good as your tender.
Did you have to bring that up again, Duck?
Thanks, guys. I feel as grand as Spencer with my tender. Now I must be off. I must collect some scrap for the smelter's yard.
Rosie tooted her whistle and puffed out of the docks with the supplies. Just as Rosie left, Thomas chuffed in. He was almost out of puff.
Edward, have you seen...
Ah, there you are, Thomas. The Fat Controller told me to tell you that you are to take the paint truck to the steamworks. He was meant to tell you earlier at the steamworks, but he forgot. Yeah, he's busy, you know. You know him.
Botheration. Now I'll never catch up with Rosie now.
Why, Thomas?
Is there something important you need to tell her?
Yes. Rosie thinks that she is stronger than Gordon just because she has a tender. And Rosie is going to do all her jobs at once.
Oh my goodness. Rosie could have an accident. Doc, you better go and find Rosie before she overloads herself.
Right, Edward. Don't worry, Thomas. I'll catch up to Rosie quick as a flash.
Duck blew his whistle and set off to find Rosie, while Thomas buffered up to the paint truck and set off back to the steamworks. Rosie soon arrived at Maythwaite Station. The loaded scrap was waiting there. Rosie soon coupled up to the loaded scrap truck.
Making good time. Now I'll collect the coal trucks.
Rosie puffed out of the station. Duck was almost catching up, but suddenly, out of nowhere, Sidney came along on the same track as Duck.
Look out!
Duck applied his brakes and stopped just in time.
What on earth are you doing on my line, Sidney?
I don't know. I don't even know what happened. Huh? Where am I again?
I haven't got time for this. Move on to the other line and just let me pass.
Sidney was soon out of Duck's way, and Duck puffed on after Rosie.
What got him in a hurry? Now, where was I going again? Why do I keep forgetting what I'm doing? Wait, what was I doing?
Soon, Rosie had collected the coal trucks, and was now on her way to make her deliveries.
This is wonderful. Soon all my jobs will be done early. The Fat Controller will be pleased.
But Rosie was heading for trouble, because she was so puffed up in the smoke box, she didn't realise she was being rushed with the trucks. This made the trucks cross, and began to make a plan.
Let's push her down the hill and throw her off the rails.
The trucks giggled, but Rosie didn't hear them. Soon, Rosie was climbing the hill. It was hard work climbing the hill with a heavy train, but at last, Rosie got to the top, just as Duck puffed up behind her.
Hello again, Duck.
Rosie, there's no time to explain. Just because you have a tender doesn't mean...
Before Duck could say anything, the trucks began their trips.
On!
What? Oh my! Help!
Rosie was now going faster. The driver tried to pull on the brakes, but the weight of the trucks made her go even faster. Rosie was scared.
Someone help me! I can't stop! Help!
On! Faster!
Then there was trouble. Up ahead was a very sharp bend.
Oh no! Stop pushing, you trucks! Stop!
And with a loud crash, Rosie and her train came off the rails. Rosie's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but Rosie was upset. Not only did she damage herself, but her tender was damaged as well, and its paintwork was scratched, and the trucks were all over the place. Duck soon puffed alongside.
Goodness me! Are you okay, Rosie?
I think so. I guess I've bit more than I can chew, didn't I?
Yeah. Victor tried to warn you not to pull too many trucks. A tender doesn't make you stronger.
Rosie just stayed silent. Just then, Edward arrived. The Fat Controller was on board. He was not happy.
Rosie, you have caused confusion and delay. Not only have damaged yourself and your tender, you have also delayed your deliveries. I thought I could rely on you.
Rosie felt so bad she almost cried. Edward spoke up.
Please, sir, don't be too hard on Rosie. She is still a young engine after all.
Indeed, sir. Rosie didn't know that having a tender doesn't make you stronger, and she wanted to do all her jobs just to show she was a really useful engine and...
But before Duck could finish, Rosie spoke up next.
I appreciate you two sticking up for me, but I've learned that it's better to do your jobs one at a time. Rushing your work can lead you into trouble.
The trucks laughed.
Shut up! And sir, I'm sorry I caused all this mess.
The Fat Controller smiled.
I can see that you're sorry and that you have learned your lesson on not to rush. Once you've been repaired, you can do your jobs one job at a time.
Thank you, sir.
Later, Rosie was back at the steamworks being repaired. Victor even fixed Rosie's broken coal bunker. The tender was mended, but it was also having its paint removed, so another engine could use it if they needed a spare.
Okay, Rosie, you're fixed.
Thanks, Victor. Now I must make up for lost time.
Soon, Rosie was on her way to the quarry, but this time she only had the truck of supplies with her. Rosie soon arrived with the supplies. Mavis was pleased to see Rosie.
Thank you for bringing the supplies, Rosie.
Rosie smiled. Next, Rosie delivered the load of scrap to the smelter's yard. The diesels didn't say anything to Rosie, but Rosie didn't mind. She knew what the diesels were like. Lastly, Rosie brought the coal to the transfer yards. The narrow gauge engines were pleased to see Rosie and the coal she had brought. Rosie then returned to Mayfway Station. The Fat Controller was waiting for her. So was Thomas, Edward and Duck.
Well done, Rosie. You have done all your jobs, despite the mishap today, but you've learned from your mistakes, and that makes you a really useful engine.
Thank you, sir.
All the engines whistled, and Rosie couldn't have felt happier. Well, that's the end of the story. See you next time. Goodbye.